Welcome to episode 7 of the Degenerate Football Podcast. I'm RJ Chopper, your fearless leader. My man Bo from the Football Glory Hole. It is an awesome time of the year. We are rolling right now. We are week 7 of NFL, week 8 of college, week 9 if you want to count week 0. I mean, for crying out loud. But it's been a pretty good run here. Still sitting at 56%, right in the meat. Right where you want to be. You want to be above that 53, and we're well above that right now. 4-1 last week in the Super Contest.
4-1, baby, and 5-1 overall in the NFL.
All right, so good stuff. So we'll start with a little college football here, and there's a couple of games we're going to give you, starting with, and this is tough for me to do. I'm not even going to say anything about it because my Tennessee Volunteers are playing Alabama this week, and we're a dumpster fire. Got a quarterback in the concussion protocol, and it's 34.5, Bama as the favorite, at home in Tuscaloosa.
34.5, and we are going to swallow 34.5 points to Alabama. And here's why. Alabama this year is 3-3 against the spread. Not very good, right?
No.
34-point margin of victory on that, though. But let's dive a little bit deeper and see which games that Bama didn't cover. They didn't cover against New Mexico State. How could they not cover against New Mexico State? Well, they were 54.5-point favorite, which is the second biggest line since 2009, and they only won by 52. Disappointed us a little bit, right?
Big time.
Yeah. So they also didn't cover against South Carolina. The spread was 25.5. They only won by 24. Now, who did South Carolina just beat?
That would be the Georgia Bulldogs.
They did beat the Georgia Bulldogs, and here's the correlation, and then here's why we had South Carolina in the win last week. Alabama was 25.5-point favorite in South Carolina. Georgia was a 25-point favorite in South Carolina. That means you're telling me that Georgia's only a half-point worse than Alabama? I don't think so. That's why we were all over South Carolina that last week, and we won. We didn't predict the win, but we did have them plus the 25. Now we look at the third and final game that Alabama hasn't covered, and this is the game that was only true disappointment this year, Chop. That's against Ole Miss. They were 37.5-point favorite. They only won by 28. That's 9.5 points below expectations. That's not Alabama-like at all. So how did Ole Miss do that? Ole Miss did that by controlling the clock. They actually led time of possession in that game.
All right.
And how did they do it? They ran for 279 yards against Alabama.
Oh, we couldn't run for 279 yards against air at Tennessee.
Exactly. Mississippi is 25th in the country at 5.2 YPA, so that was not an aberration. That is what they do well. Your Volunteers are 88th in the country at 3.8 YPA running the ball. They're not going to be able to keep Bama off the field. And what does Bama do well? They pass the ball, 6th in the country, 10.8 YPA passing. The Vols, 96th against the pass, giving up 8.1 YPA.
Yeah.
This is the SEC. They're at home. Saban will show no mercy, and they're going to roll Tide roll.
And we've got a defensive coach, mind you. Okay? And we're still 90-something in passing. Gave up 30-plus to Georgia State and to BYU. What an awful team, awful program. Proud of you, Coach Pruitt. Way to keep wearing them pleated pants. I really like it. It's a good look.
You guys can't tell he's not bitter at all or upset.
No, I am not upset. So Bama minus the 34.5. All right, let's go. We'll stay at the South. Okay. We'll go outside the SEC though. We're not going to go in the Big 12. Not going to go to the ACC. Even though we do have some action maybe on Texas. But how about a little Western Kentucky Hilltoppers and the Charlotte 49ers or 69ers, whoever they are?
Man.
89ers, 79ers? The
name of this podcast is Degenerate for a reason, baby. We are true degenerates. We love the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers -9 at home versus Charlotte. Western Kentucky is 4-2 against the spread on the season with a 5-point margin of victory relative to the spread, while Charlotte's 2-4 against the spread on the year. In fact, Western Kentucky, after 2 consecutive wins or more, and they won their last 3, they've beat UAB, Old Dominion, and Army in a row. Since 1992, they are 22-9 against the spread. That is a 71% cover. UAB, they beat them, right? They're ranked 73rd in our power rankings. They beat Army. They're ranked 70th in our power rankings. Western Kentucky was a 3.5 and 5-point dog respectively in both those games. They won the game outright. Well, Western Kentucky is getting consistently undervalued because in our power rankings, they're 46th, which means they should have never been dogs in that game to begin with. And if you look at Charlotte in our power rankings, they're 106 right now.
Oh.
Add it all up, it's a top 10 delta for us in college football this week. Let's go Hilltop.
All right, Western Kentucky -9. So we'll go to the NFL. There's a couple of games. We also want to talk about just how these lines are made. Let's do the games real quick. Minnesota, Detroit. Minnesota is a point and a half favorite.
Yes, we like the Vikings this week. All three algorithms were on the Vikings last week against the Eagles. That was an easy win. We had the Cousins trends going with us. Well, I know James talked to you guys about that last week. Cousins is now 31-16 against the spread in his games in his career in games that start at noon.
Wow.
That is 66%. He's 9-23 in all of the start times. That is 28%. This game is at noon. But my biggest takeaway from this game is the confusion last week over Detroit versus Green Bay. There was a lot of professionals, even professionals that we know, that were confused on how that line was only 4. That should have been more. The Packers are better, blah, blah, blah.
Because Detroit is good, man. We said this before the year. Detroit's a good team.
They are a good football team. In fact, in our power rankings, when we lined it up, it was a 0 delta, which means it was no play for us. That's why it wasn't in our premium picks, because it was an even team, even game. There was no value in that line.
Yeah.
So now everybody's seen that game, so now everybody's like, oh, well, Detroit should have won. You know, they got screwed by the refs, this and that. And so now we're trying to kind of search for the truth, because they were undervalued before. Now we think they're getting overvalued here.
Okay.
The truth is, Detroit in our power rankings was a 0 delta last week. When you actually look at the game, everybody said they shouldn't have won. No, they shouldn't have. Green Bay outgained them by 2-1, right? And everybody says, oh, if they wouldn't have kicked field goals, they would have scored touchdowns. Well, did you think they were going to score touchdowns? Because Detroit is 20th in the league at red zone efficiency scoring touchdowns. So that was built into the line too. You have to remember that everything that you know about a team or you think you know about a team is already built into the line. So you can't say, oh, if they wouldn't have had these penalties, if they wouldn't have had, if they would have scored touchdowns at the field goals, it's already built in there. Vegas already knew they weren't going to score touchdowns, more than likely, right? It's more than likely what's going to happen. So now Detroit has been overvalued because the public says, those 2 hands to the face cost them the game. They should have beat Detroit in Detroit. Of course they're going to hang with Minnesota at home. The truth is Minnesota is the 3rd best team in football according to our power rankings. Detroit is not bad, but they're nowhere close to that. And this delta grows larger as this line goes down. We love Minnesota -1.5.
All right, what about the Patriots-Jets? This is a Monday night game. It's a rivalry game. Jets are coming off a big win over the Cowboys. Patriots, all they do is win, even though their offense hasn't been great of late. It's a 9.5-point spread. That's a big spread.
Yep, we like the Patriots -9.5 at the Jets. Again, we're going to use a little bit of relative correlations here.
Right.
So the Patriots -9.5. The Cowboys were what last week? -7.5?
Yeah.
So that means that Vegas is telling us the Cows are 2 point better or worse than the Patriots, right?
Right.
Because they're both equal size, so 2 points worse. So that means if a game was played between Dallas and New England in New England,
right,
the Patriots should be -5 in that game. Correct?
In New England, yes, correct.
So, lucky for us, that game is happening week 12, and the look-ahead line right now is Patriots -6. So, if you use last week's correlation and that look-ahead, that gives us 1 point that the market is off already. And now you combine that with the fact that the Jets are getting overvalued, right?
Overvalued.
They just came up with a huge win, 7.5-point dog at home. Donald's back. Everybody's feeling great. Instead of the 3 points he's probably worth, now he's worth 5 all of a sudden. This spread should be closer to about 13 if all things considered. It's down to 9.5. You got 2 to 3 points here working. You got another point here working, undervalued on the Cows, or overvalued on the Cows. Meet it in the middle. Love the Patriots -9.5.
All right, very good. So let's talk about the Cowboys and what the line does and what lines do with player injuries. Yep. So the Cowboys right now, 2.5 to 3 point favorite over Philadelphia. Okay. Cowboys don't know about Tyron Smith, La'el Collins, Amari Cooper. Cobb and Gallup have been banged up. They've got injuries to their defense. Philadelphia has injuries everywhere. Jason Peters, who, by the way, has taken himself out of like 14 of the last 24 games at some point during the game. How are you dealing, and how does Vegas deal with injuries and the spreads?
So the first thing Vegas does is they build a line based on what the expectation is, all things being equal, and then before they put it out to the public, they adjust from that for players being up or down. So they got a lot of guys that work out there in a lot of cities, and they get information. They've got inside guys on, hey, where do we really look? What do we really think who's going to play? Just like say for example, the Jets last week, right? It was at 7.5 or 8. before Darnold was announced in. Darnold came in, it didn't move an inch. Then you're thinking, well, Darnold has no value. He's not any more value than Luke Falk. Of course he is.
Yeah.
But they were already expecting him to play, so they built the line out with him already built into play. So now what you see on this line is it opened at 3. It's been at 3 or 3.5 for 2 weeks now. It's down to 2.5. So the public is coming in betting money on Philly because Philly is getting more healthy. You got Darby coming back. You got Mills coming in. But if you look all in all, you have to weigh it out. Is it a net positive loss or net even on which side? So if the Cowboys are down 1 tackle, well, you already know Philly's down a tackle. That's net probably even, right? Mm-hmm. Even if it's Smith, they're losing their best tackle too. Right. So now we look at the weapons, moving on to Cooper. I think that's the biggest part of it. Is Cooper going to play? Is Cooper not going to play? I think that line at 2.5 is telling you that Vegas expects him to play. If they didn't expect him to play, honestly, I think it would be closer to 1.5. Cooper is about a point player in this league, which is huge, Shoppy. Anything outside of a quarterback and a standalone, not a cluster injury, a point is huge. So, just take, for example, Jalen Ramsey is a half a point cornerback. That means he's the best cornerback in the league. There's not another cornerback in football that's worth half a point.
No.
So Cooper is that type of player to the Cowboys especially.
All right, very good. That's great stuff. So Cowboys are a 2.5-point favorite. So here's the selections we've given you for today. Bama minus 34.5. Western Kentucky minus 9. Minnesota minus 1.5. Patriots minus 9.5. I'm RJ Choppy, 105 through the Fan, 5:30 to 10, Monday through Friday. With myself and Sean Sharif on 105 through the Fan. Bo from the Football Glory Hole. Where can we get all your information and podcast?
At FBall Glory Hole on Twitter and podcast wherever you get podcasts. Just search the Football Glory Hole podcast.
All right, so this has been the Degenerate Football Podcast, Episode 7. Good luck this week. We'll talk to you next week on the next episode of the Degenerate Football Podcast.